Welcome to the Intelligent Teams podcast, where we interview leading thinkers from business and the sciences of mind to find new ways to help your teams and organizations thrive. I'm your host, Daniel Susser. This week's guest is organizational consultant, author, and creator Emily Webber. Welcome, Emily, to Intelligent Teams.
Thank you.
Emily, could you share a little bit about who you are and what you do for a living?
Okay, so yes, my name is Emily. I'm an organisational consultant. So I'm an independent consultant, and I work with organisations quite a lot in government, some outside government. Mainly, I guess, what I do is help create environments where people thrive so that organisations can thrive. And that can be things like helping leadership teams sort out what they're doing, helping with organisational structures, helping with bringing people together through collaboration, things like communities of practice, other models and things. And I get a lot of stuff more recently I've been working on is around structures where people can grow their capability, either in their teams, in their practices, across organisations, and through things like career frameworks and career pathways that support collaborative working rather than siloed working.
How did you get into doing this kind of work?
Well, how far back do you want me to
go? Wherever you feel is relevant.
I guess
we've got time.
Oh, okay. I mean, I've been independent for 10 years now. And before that, my last kind of employed job was I was working at Government Digital Services, the head of Agile Delivery. And so I come from an Agile delivery background, which means I've always been interested in how teams work together and helping them work together more effectively. When I took on the role of head of Agile Delivery at GDS, my real focus there was helping create a kind of consistency and cohesion amongst the Agile Delivery professionals, so that we were working together, we had a kind of common voice, and we could say, like, we had an understanding of what it meant when we talked about Agile Delivery, so that then we could talk to other people about it, either kind of across GDS or in other departments. So that's where that's moving into that was a bit of the move from just working with teams or a couple of teams to working on more widely across organisations, and then growing that over the last 10 years. And something I think you find when you can kind of look back over a long period of time like that, is you start to say, oh, these are things that I end up being drawn to, and there's some kind of commonality between them that puts them into a kind of bucket of stuff, which is, I guess, environments where people can thrive.
What does thriving look like for you?
It looks like people that are kind of happy and motivated at work. And there's lots of things that go against that happening in the workplace. I often think, I said this to someone the other day, it's like we're all human beings and we all have sensible thoughts about the world and how we connect with other people and the things that we need to make us successful and happy and motivated and like happy with the work that we do. And it's almost like sometimes organisations go, we know all that, but we're going to put this in place. And they take like their human hats off and they put on their like corporate hats, and they're like, oh, we must make sure that we are efficient, or something that ends up meaning that people have got to go through more steps, get moved around more often, get more miserable, and don't enjoy themselves very much.
And if I was listening and I said, well, that's all very well, Emily, but the work needs to get done, so why should I care if the people in my teams are happy and thriving? What's that got to do with it? What's the connection for you?
Because those people do better work. amazingly. There was I was talking about this the other day. There's a piece of research that I sometimes put in some of my talks that I do, called "No Employee an Island," and it's lonely research into loneliness in the workplace. And that talks about they did a bunch of research with a substantial enough amount of people. They first of all got them to fill out this UCLA did a loneliness scale. It's quite sad to read it. It's all like I feel like this. I'm not connected to anyone. I don't feel like it's got some of the questions feel quite harsh. And they got them to fill that out, and then they looked at their kind of how productive they were, and they talked to their line managers, etc. And the research shows that people that are lonely, so they don't feel connected or don't feel like they've got the friendships at work that they need, just don't do very well. So like it's that people thriving so organizations can thrive, it's because they do, because when people are happy and motivated and like into the work they're doing, they understand what they're doing, why they're doing it, they're doing it with other people, they feel responsible for it, then it's just better for organizations.
Yeah, and I think that's there's this win-win element, right? Like
Mhm.
by bringing our humanity, by bringing our personness and our vulnerability and all this soft stuff, like you get better creative work done, um, you get better bottom line for whatever your organization is trying to do. You can make more money, you could have more impact and stuff like that. And it often feels like it's an either or, right? You can either have happy people or be effective or something like that. And the thread that runs through a lot of your work that I've seen and read is like it's not an either or. It's both.
Yeah. Interesting you mentioned creative as well. I think there's more to explore here, particularly in the kind of in the current climate of which it's the current climate that feels like it's been going on since the beginning of the pandemic, which is lots of people feel very squeezed. And there's other reasons, this kind of compounding effect at the moment where there are fewer people doing more work, and talk about things like efficiencies and words that are problematic. This thing about not like having space to be creative. So we're dealing with wicked problems. We're dealing with stuff. We're not working in factories. We don't know what the answer is. So people do need space to kind of stop and think and try and have creative solutions to problems individually and in a team. And that creativity is quite important, for anyone, not just like designers, like for anyone that's on a team that's solving problems, which most of us are.
Yeah, there's something about most of the interesting work we do is problem solving in one form or another, whether technical problem solving or social problem solving, or so even if we're not in a sort of traditional creative, graphic designer or artist or writer, we still need to access the associative and creative parts of our minds, and like we tend to do that better not under like horrible pressure and stress and angry bosses or whatever. We tend to do that with like people we like and where we feel safe to experiment and things like that.
Yeah, exactly. Or not crazy context switching. Again, it's about getting that balance, isn't it? Because often organizations are pushing people to work harder, work faster, deliver stuff more quickly. I think I'm always in this place where there's this balance between what is sustainable for people, teams, and organizations versus deliver that thing that you were supposed to deliver last week and deliver more. And those two things can often be at odds with each other, because it's so I have this situation a lot where I'm talking about communities of practice or situations where people might go and learn something or work through problems or whatever, and people often feeling like they're not allowed to go and spend that time doing that because they're supposed to be delivering something over here. And it's that, how do you get any better at stuff when you don't spend any time dedicated to or space to thinking, learning new things, and it's only delivery. So that I feel like I'm in that space quite a bit.
Can you share a bit more about communities of practice? What are they? What drew you to that as a that's how I like originally came across your work. Emily Webber, the communities of practice person.
Yes. So, I mean, I've got many talks about this. I I guess I've been, and this is the thing, I think I've been working with communities for quite a while, and this idea that we are stronger together. So I've been doing stuff, I guess, bringing people together outside of work for quite a long time. I think when I started communities practice at Government Digital Service again, where I wanted, as I mentioned earlier, I wanted to bring that group of people, the agile delivery professionals, kind of together to share with each other, but most, which had started to happen already, but I kind of wanted us to have a unified voice and understand what it was that we were saying. So not that everyone had to say the same thing, but at least we had a common understanding of what good agile delivery looked like. So that's where I started with communities of practice within organizations. So it's people, communities of practice are people that share a practice, and that this is quite an important bit. There's lots of different types of communities, but with community of practice, it's people that share a common practice or passion for something, and they get together regularly. They get and through that they get better, or their practice gets better. They get better collectively. So it can look like people getting together on a regular basis every week or couple of weeks to discuss stuff. It can be, I think really importantly, I hear people say, oh, I'm going to my community of practice, when they mean the community of practice meetup, almost like the meeting is the community of practice, which is not true. The community of practice is the people and the connections between them, and they might meet regularly, which gives them a nice cadence, but they might also have other ways that they should also have other ways that they interact, either through kind of smaller groups or instant messaging tools, or just going over and talking to each other, or they might work on some things or various other stuff, but that kind of continued interaction with each other for various reasons, with a kind of, really importantly, a real underlying thing around people being connected to each other, which makes the community bit. I've started saying you can't have community without unity. That's my new NAF phrase. Because I often hear people, and just, to me, if you lump a bunch of people together in a room, that's not a community, that's a group of people together in a room. Or if you have a massive network of people that might talk to each other now and then but don't really know each other, it's probably a network and not a community. So I think that connection between people is really important, and that connection between people then helps people feel more connected to the organisation, each other, more motivated, more confident in their ideas. They will learn from each other, they will share knowledge, they will collaborate, and all those kind of wonderful things.
Why do you think it is that people will associate the community of practice with the community of practice meetup, and they'll sort of use that as the shorthand and not think about all the other stuff?
Good question. I think sometimes because a lot of communities of practice are set up in that way, that it is just the meetup and they don't really do anything else. Yeah, do you know what? I don't know the answer to that. It's a good question.
I'm thinking about like other types of community that exist, like my church, my synagogue, my rugby club, my whatever, and you think about all the other. Maybe there is a sort of main event,
Yeah,
my
yeah, yeah.
church meets on church day, Sunday, or my synagogue meets on the Sabbath or whatever.
Yeah.
It's
Church
not a
day. Yeah.
Christian. Yeah, church day, that's what we call it in the Christian religion. um, but you know what I mean? But there is like this one, there's a sort of main thing, but then the community is like very clearly in those cases, like also the welfare programs and the
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
study group and the whatever.
Yeah, yeah, and the ongoing connections that happen. Yeah, I don't know. I think maybe I've definitely seen places where communities of practice are kind of formalized in a way that isn't particularly helpful, or people think, or the organization thinks, well, you can have a community of practice, but we need to put all these measures against it, and it has to meet these business goals. And that starts to kind of turn it into just basically another business thing, which is adding more work to people's workload, rather than giving them the space to connect with other people and do the good stuff that communities do naturally without or do better without having pressure on them.
It's another tool of control, right? Like a community is something that is sort of motivated towards a common goal. It's not like being motivated towards a common goal by authority or by
Hmm.
someone more senior. Whereas, yeah, if the community of practice meeting is something that's mandated and like that your head of whatever or your director tells you have to do, and you get in trouble for not meeting your community objective or whatever, then then it's hard for me to bring that authentic version of myself that wants to help people and be helped and stuff like that there.
Yeah, I think, and I was working with a client recently talking about this. So you're a delivery manager, which means that you probably matrix managed. You have a head of practice and you have a head of whatever team it is that you're working on, or head of a program or whatever.
So matrix managed is when your line manager is not necessarily working in the same area as you. Is that right?
Yeah, so you have someone that's responsible for the practice bit, maybe your capability and the capacity of the delivery managers. And then you have the work, the kind of day-to-day work you're doing. So there's some kind of outcome that you're working on. You've got a team, you're working to some kind of goal, some kind of ends. So there's the capability, capacity, and then there's the outcomes. There's two different things, and you're somewhere in the middle of those two things. I'm going to keep taking your as example. So as a delivery manager, you belong to a practice of delivery managers, which means that often means that through there you have your line management, and maybe you have some access to training, or you have things that help you grow as a delivery manager that come through your practice. What I've seen sometimes happen is people kind of confuse that formal practice stuff with the community stuff. So it's like communities of practice are voluntary. People could choose to get together and do and talk and learn and do stuff, and some people will come, some people won't, and some people take part, some people won't. That's fine. But with your practice, it's like you can't really you shouldn't really have to opt in to like learning and development opportunities or career development opportunities or the kind of support that you get for the formal side of the practice. And there can be a bit of a confusion sometimes, I think, where they get compounded too much as to the formal stuff that you should have to help you versus the stuff that you can opt into.
So let's take it like taking it outside of the I don't know technology agile
Mm-hmm.
sort of sphere as well, because some of my audience are not technology professionals as well. So if I'm a nurse or something, maybe I've got like my formal nurse, the qualifications that I need in nursing, and the meetings where I go to where I make sure that I'm in line with regulations and stuff like that. And then maybe my community of practice might look like other nurses who volunteer to get together and discuss like certain issues, and other people that I know from around me who are not my formal line manager, who are not sort of paired up with me by my bosses, who I go to for other kinds of support, and we work out how to be better nurses together, something like that.
Yeah, I haven't got my, I don't know how nursing works. I can give you like a good example is probably teachers, actually. So you might be a teacher you'll be a teacher within a faculty if you're in a secondary school. So you'll have your class, your subject, which might have a couple of other teachers, your faculty, which will have other people in a group of, it's like your job family, so you have other people in similar subjects, and you belong to a school, but you might have a community of practice across your trust of other schools. Um, yeah, that kind of stuff. I think did that help? I'm not sure.
So if you are talking to someone who says, "Yeah, communities of practice, brilliant. I like the idea. No one else has heard of this concept, and I definitely don't have one at my organization." Where do you suggest that someone starts?
But they come to me, of course, and they
Get some
employ me
budget.
to come and help them. Um, so there's two ways. There's kind of there's bottom up and top down, right? So there's people just getting together, working out that they want to meet regularly and want to chat about stuff. And there's the organisation putting in some of the norms in place to allow that to happen. And people can start communities of practice and get going and do and get quite far, but they can only get to a point where they will need some support from the organisation, because they will probably want to change stuff or have time to do things, or money, time, people, something, to get stuff done. So somewhere they need to meet in the middle. But if someone's looking to start, aside from obviously going to my website, communitiesofpractice.work, and looking at some of the stuff there, that's got things like Kickoff Canvas in it. It's got my maturity model. It's got some links to some talks about it as well. So it's some ideas where to start, and also a link to my book, Building Successful Communities of Practice.
Right, so there's like specific tools people can use to help them align on purpose and assess where their community's up to, things like that.
Yeah.
Is there a difference that you see between the communities of practice that are set up by organizations who go, wow, this sounds like a cool thing I want in my organization, let's make one of them, versus the ones that sort of spring up organically and then get some wrapper put around them?
I mean, when I normally go into organizations, I'm coming from the organization side, but creating, so I often go in and do workshops with groups of people, which is kind of the organization doing it, but me helping them work out what they want to do. So it's kind of a bit of both. Sometimes I will come in when they just need a little bit of help to reset or rethink about where they're at and what they're doing. When I go into places where some have already kind of started to form, that's great, because you've got a bunch of people that are really interested, and then I will work with them on things like working out why they exist, how they describe themselves, that kind of stuff. And yeah, they're probably a bit more successful. I mean, a community of practice will kind of live and die based on who's in it and who's kind of keen to keep it going. You can't kind of force them, I'd say.
So even if an organisation brings you in and says, hey, Emily, come set up our community of practice, and you go in, if there aren't those, do you need sort of those champions there on the ground to really give it the energy? Like, I can imagine that's a challenge, that if you're brought in by the organisation, it's harder for this to feel like it's something that's grounded. There's some work that you need to do for it to feel like it's grounded in the needs of the actual people that are there. So like, how do you deal with a situation like that?
I think all the organisations I've been, you can do a call out and say who wants to get involved in this, and a lot of people tend to put their hands up, because they do want to connect with other people. It's I think inherently as humans we want to connect with other people, so it's not a difficult sell for some people. Don't want to engage, but it's not a really difficult sell. There's usually some people that are really keen to get involved.
Are there any things to avoid?
In general, I think that thing about making it don't make them too big too quickly, I think is important. Like, I think it's worthwhile being deliberate about growth in a community of practice. If you throw 300 people into a MS Teams channel, no one will say anything probably. So like finding who is interested and engaged and excited about it and growing that slowly and letting some of that happen organically is a really good thing to do. Not put too much pressure on them in terms of what you're expecting to happen out of them. I think it's valuable for people to connect with each other for anything. Like I was working at years ago, I was working in the land registry, and they had a flower arranging club. And it's brilliant, because what happened is they had a flower arranging club. People that went to the flower arranging club then knew each other, and then when it came to working with each other, they'd already met and they had some trust, and it makes work much easier. So there's a real value with communities just letting people meet each other. It makes work flows much smoother. So there's no point in saying, oh, but then you've got to do this, and have all these outcomes. Just the act of people getting together is really important.
Could you give us a little sneak peek into some of those tools that you might find at communitiesofpractice.work? Like, what are some of the things that help these things set up? How do they? nuts and bolts?
Yes, there's a couple of things I have on there. I'm just having a look. And the tools then go to the side. I've got my community practice kickoff canvas, which is just some things to consider when you're bringing a community together. It's useful if you want other people to join to be able to explain who the community is for and what it's kind of there to do. It's useful to understand what the edges are of a community. So if you say, we are a community of flower arrangers, for example, for people that like flower arranging, that helps people say, is that me? Is that not me? Is that something I'm interested in? Is that something I want to join? And that really helps. So that's in there. There's a community practice maturity model, which talks about some of the things that communities might do as they go through some maturing phases, from potential forming, maturing, and self-sustaining. There's a community practice effectiveness review that is based on my 5 benefits of a community of practice and has some questions that help people think about where their communities are. And lots of people in the community can do it and then compare answers and then say, okay, where are our gaps? Why do we completely disagree on this thing? Why does this work for some people and not for others? And there's a couple of other things in there. I talk about measuring communities of practice, and a little bit about community size. Yeah.
What are those 5 benefits?
They are support networks, learning. So communities of practice help people learn, joining up knowledge. The next one is about kind of common approaches. So communities will share stuff with each other and kind of, without being too centralized about this is the way you have to do things, good practice will spread, and people will take common approaches to things, and collaboration. So people will start working as a community matures and people kind of talk about what is their day-to-day problems and what their challenges are. They will start to work on things together.
Yeah, there's one of the things that I have enjoyed most about the communities of practice I've been in is the way that someone brings a model or a practice or a tool or something like that, and if it's good, people will copy it.
Yeah.
And it's the viral effect of some of these ideas or ways of thinking about or talking about work, and you can only really get that if you get exposure to other people who are also thinking about this thing.
Yeah.
And on a training course may not be it. It's more, day to day. I might need to see someone use it 2 or 3 times and then be like, actually, I could use that with my team.
Yeah, and I think with a community as well, you get the opportunity to try stuff out. One thing we used to do with the delivery management community at GDS was try out workshops. So it's a much safer space to try out workshop in a community of practice than it is to do it on your team, or with a client. So it's a chance to kind of see what works, what doesn't work, kind of get confidence in doing those things. It can really help with that as well.
And with a bunch of people who know that it's their job to support you, and sometimes that can be through really good feedback and really honest, like that actually didn't work, that thing you did in that workshop, it was too quick or too slow or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So you mentioned that in the last few years you've been thinking more about capability. Can you share a little bit about how you think about capability and capability building in organizations?
Yeah, so I think that some of that naturally grew from communities of practice and learning. But one thing, one thing I was just noticed as I was seeing people talk about their job roles and people talking about stuff at conferences and seeing some of the career frameworks that go out into the world, it always felt a little bit at odds with the concept of a multidisciplinary team or interdisciplinary team. So when we work at a team level, we want people to collaborate. We want them to work together. We want we want a team to feel you're jointly responsible for what it is that they're doing, and then to work together to achieve that thing. And then we have these job descriptions that just pull them completely away from each other, and we have these career paths that kind of pull people really away from each other. And I see like a lot of organizations, you'll read job description, you're like, it's the same stuff written in different ways, in different roles. And I find that really, yeah, at odds. So you're like, on one hand, we want people to work together, but then we also kind of keep them really separate from each other. I know that can also can feel a little bit of odds for some of my work around communities of practice as well. So it's like getting that balance between giving people space to build their specialisms whilst also allowing them to learn new things or become multi-specialists, or collaborate with other people where it makes sense to. So I've been doing I was dabbling in career paths for a little while. And a couple of years ago, I worked with an organisation on growing theirs, which started to look at a little bit more of a modular way of thinking about things. So a couple of things is one, kind of trying to shift career paths or career frameworks away from talking about skills and towards talking about outcomes first. So instead of saying, as a designer, you need to know Figma, for example, it might be you need, like, one of the outcomes is something around prototyping ideas, to test, or testing ideas might be one of the outcomes, or that wasn't very well written outcome in my head, but one I know, good delivery manager outcome, for example, is healthy, happy teams. It's not, I know how to do Scrum. But you might use various tools for doing that. So using those kind of outcomes for people to think about what they need to be able to achieve at different levels of their careers. That was one thing. But the one thing that I really focused on with that organisation as well is this idea that you have a job title, but you don't necessarily, just because you're a designer, for example, like you may also do other things. So you may do design, but you may also do some user research, and you may also do some delivery management, and you may also do some of this. And what more traditional job descriptions and career paths do is they talk about stuff kind of exclusive of each other rather than like kind of additive. So if you have something that is a little bit more like, well, as a delivery manager, you do this, you're a competent product manager, or you're competent in these product management capabilities, and maybe you have some of these analyst capabilities, or whatever that might look like. There's a couple of things there. One, it helps you see where you're more the same as other people. It also helps you write job descriptions that are a little bit more like, you can take bits from various places, but it also helps people, if they want to move roles, to say, oh, I'm not that far away from doing a different job. Maybe I can shift into something else because I've already got this stuff. So it's trying to take the view of people are more similar than they are. So healthcare's got some really great terms that we pinch all the time, right? Like, they have multidisciplinary teams. They've had multidisciplinary teams longer, right? And they had a term that I took when I was writing a talk. I found this term and I was like, this just describes what I see in organisations a lot. And the term is professional protectionism. And that is where somebody will protect the edges of what is kind of theirs to own and see it as a slight on them, or taking away from their specialisms or their ego if somebody else does it. So if I'm responsible for this, I must do this thing. And I've seen that. I don't know if you've seen that on agile teams.
I was smiling there because I'm like, I'm so the opposite. I'm like, if you can do my job, please do it. Take as much as you like. But yeah, I do see that kind of thing. This is my area. This is my area of the code base, or this is I look after these documents, or I run the meetings, or I do the this.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So trying to kind of move away from that, and that's when I was working with that client, that's one thing that started to really help them because you had someone, people were feeling maybe a little bit threatened as well. It was lockdown, people needed to be seen that they were doing stuff, so they were like, well, I can't have, I'm the user researcher, I can't have other people do the user research because that's my job, and if I'm not doing that, then what's the point? Like, what am I doing here? Um, and so it helps to say, oh, as a user researcher, you're responsible for guiding and leading and like writing the plan and responsible for the plan of user research, for example. But you don't have to do it all. But you still get to you still get to be like lead on stuff. But other people in the team might help out because it might make sense because that's what the team needs at that point in time, and it kind of allows people to keep their um feeling that they're important and they're doing something worthwhile and they're using their skills um without that being taken away from them if other people are getting involved.
Yeah, I think particularly in the delivery manager, agile coachy, scrum mastery type work, there can be a lot of assumptions that our jobs are there to like run all the meetings or even like take the notes or look after the boards and the various artifacts of work that we use. And the best delivery managers that I know sort of try and democratize to the right level
Mm-hmm.
that work. They get someone else to like run the stand, or they make sure that running the stand up is a team capability, so that if I'm off sick, it's not like something that I'm brilliant at. Whenever I join a team and they say, "Oh, we just need you to sort of keep everything neat and tidy," I'm like, "You're going to keep things neat and tidy, and I'm going to ask if things are neat and tidy, and then like try and make that a useful conversation and help us agree stuff." And it's where do you think that professional protectionism comes from?
I was just listening to something about this earlier. I think it's like the doubling down on specialisms, really. Like and particularly in the civil, you're in the civil service, so civil services in a lot of places, a lot of generalists. In digital teams, there tends to be lots of specialists, and generalists don't get kudos. It's like I think it's seen as less so. So that doubling down on specialism becomes like, well, I need to protect this thing because it's my specialism and it's what I've been employed to do, this thing, and I need to keep this. And then when we reward people for what they do individually, that kind of, I guess that amplifies it and yeah, doubles down on it.
Crystallizes it. Yeah, there's something about the level, like what's the functional unit of an organization or something like that. And if we assume it's a person and their skills and their contribution, well, then yeah, it makes sense for me I'll get approbation and learning and promotion by like showing how clever I am at the things that I do. Whereas if you can show whereas in reality, so much of our work is entangled and interdisciplinary and between lots of people, and the whole team contributes at some point. So even if I do 90% of it, but the rest of the team does the other 10%, we've still all got over the line. Well, if we reward that and if we find ways of recognizing and managing that team level interaction, I guess that's what I'm calling a team mind in this sort of intelligent teams work, then it's more effective, it's more realistic, it's more grounded in how stuff actually happens. But like HR systems and performance reviews and things like that don't happen at the team level.
When I was working with one organisation, it's like every year line managers would send an email out saying, "We got who wants to use some learning and development budget?" And then people go, "I'll go over here and I do this and I do this," and it's like, well, there's a real opportunity here to join some of this stuff up. And not all learning opportunities are just training. So if you have a practice of people, there will be people in that practice that know stuff that other people don't, or there'll be people in the organisation that know stuff that other people want to know, and there's ways of pairing them up, or there's some learning you can do internally. It doesn't all have to be like, right, there's training budget, everyone go off separately and do something on your own, and then it's really disjointed. I think there's a thing that I put out a while ago. I spoke about it one year at Map Camp. many years ago, where I talked about lenses for capability. So it's called capability profile mapping, and it talks about three lenses to think about. So there's individuals and what they want to learn and how they want to grow, or do they have the tools do they have the tools they need to do their job now, and what does growing look like? And some of that might not. Some of that might be completely different from what you do now. Like people love to learn stuff. So individual is one lens. The next lens is the team. So what does the team need to know? What's coming up in the future? And do they have those? Yeah, do they have what they need? And then the next is the practice. So is the practice as a whole going in direction it needs to? Is there new technology or new approaches coming in that you want to bring into the organization that mean that people in the practice are going to be ready to deal with stuff in the teams later on? So that individual teams and practice lenses are really useful. Then thinking about now, next, and then into the future, which I think a lot of people don't do that.
I see a 3x3 grid forming.
I have a 3x3 grid. Actually, it's got a missing square, but it's on somewhere on my blog.
Oh, I'll dig it out.
That one. But there is so the term, the team is the unit of delivery, which is a term that was kicking around GDS in 2012, popularized by Jamie Arnold, is actually something Jamie and I have been talking a lot about recently. And this idea that the smallest unit of delivery in the organization is the team. It shouldn't be individuals. So you are a group of people doing something collectively, not a bunch of resources being moved around a spreadsheet, for example.
Who would do such a thing?
Never seen that in my life.
No, me neither. I'm glad that doesn't happen. For some reason, there's probably some YouTube short just came into my mind of the ways in which we are fundamentally social in so many ways. And even if you were the idea of like a lone wolf person or we're surrounded in our lives by stuff that no individual could possibly do or make or create or anything like that. You pick up your phone, like there's no one in the world that could like make the phone from first principles and all the software and all this stuff. And even the more basic things than that, even if you're a hunter-gatherer, like you didn't make your own arrowheads, like someone else foraged the stones and made the twine and things like that. And we're so well attuned and biologically developed to solve problems together. And then organizations, when they work well, harness that and they say, well, let's get groups of people who are naturally group problem solvers and get them to solve problems together. And bad organizations or unhealthy ones are ones that say, well, we've hired you for your skills and your thing, so you go do it, and we're going to put you in a team because you need some other people sometimes. And I guess they don't say explicitly, but sometimes they say implicitly.
Might do. There's do you know Margaret Heffernan? So she is an organisational consultant, brilliant, wrote a whole bunch of books, including Willful Blindness, which is very interesting. She's got a bunch of other books as well about organisations. She did a TED talk called Forget the Pecking Order at Work, where she talks about an experiment that someone else did, whose name I don't have at the top of my head, which was where they created like a team of super chickens, so like the chickens that were best at laying eggs. So these two groups of chickens, one which was full of all the best egg layers and one that was just like a normal group, and then left them for a few generations and saw how they went on. And the team of super chickens, or the team of kind of just chickens laying eggs normally, just over time increased their egg laying, did better. The team of super chickens pecked each other to death. And it was like, yeah. And the analogy is, if you get a team full of like ninjas and rock stars, then they're going to peck each other to
death. Is egg laying a social activity?
I have no idea.
Not if you peck the other chickens to death, then it's a very antisocial activity.
Yeah.
we can link to what was the name of that author you said? Margaret
The Margaret Heffernan, the talk is "Forget the Pecking Order at Work." It's
Heffernan.
a TEDx talk, I think.
Pecking order, very good. I'm there already. Very good. So the idea of, well, I don't need to know everything. I just need to know who knows it. I've heard you describe that as a transactive memory system. Can
Transactive
you?
memory systems, yeah.
I don't know if I just like said all there is to say about it, but can you tell us a bit more about transactive memory systems? Like, how do they show up, or how does that help me as someone who works in a team, knowing about that?
So this is a term that has been around a while. It was a term by a guy called Daniel Wenger, I'm going to say. I might have that wrong. I have to check that. And it was kind of counter to groupthink. So everyone said groupthink's bad, and he was like, "Well, there's this thing that is good." It's something that I think I've been trying to put my finger on for a while. When I read the term, I was like, that explains what it is I'm trying to put my finger on. So this kind of inherent teamness. So whenever I kick a new team off, like my favorite team kickoffs that I ever did were like 5 days. Took people out of their location to another place. 5 days. Spent a good 5 days understanding the problem, like digging into it and feeling responsible for it, kind of building the teamness, so feeling responsible for each other, and then starting to kind of build a backlog. So it was like feeling real responsibility for what it is that they were creating and for each other, so feeling really like a team. And this whole kind of connections between teams, I was trying to put my finger on, and I heard this term transactive memory system. So your transactive memory is, you don't need to know everything. You know where to go to find a thing. So it's talked a lot about in terms of like Google. You don't know stuff, you just know to go to Google, right? Or you might not know how to get somewhere, but you know that you can go to a map and
Also, Google.
also Google, and it will tell you how to get there, right? And I might not know a thing, but I know who might know a thing. For example, I never need to remember a recipe. I just need to know that they're on the internet. And if I can get through the preamble of someone telling me about their holiday, I can get to the recipe. So transactive memory systems are people knowing where to go for information and then how that information flows around that system. So if you've got a team of people, them knowing who else on the team knows what and knows how to do what, so they don't need to keep everything in their own head, is kind of the very nature of that teamness. So we are a unit. I know where to go or who to talk to about this, that, and the other, and we understand what the norms are and how information flows around that system. Is a transactive memory system. The thing you hear people saying a lot is, oh, if one person leaves a team, that's a brand new team, which I don't think is exactly true, because the team history is still there. Like everything, like there's a lot of stuff that still remains in the team. The thing that is kind of broken is that transactive memory system. So one person leaves the team, suddenly those links break, and then the new person comes in. They need to rebuild that system. They don't just replace the old person and those lines aren't the same anymore. You need to take a chance to go, okay, let's work out how we fit together, who knows how we're going to work together, and what our team norms are.
How do you stop a team system where you're using transactive memory systems as a good state, right? It's a good thing that I don't need to know everything because that's quite efficient. I can just as long as Emily knows it, we're fine. Well, how do you stop that being quite brittle and fragile? Because some people do leave, or sometimes someone's got the flu, and then everyone knows that Alan knows where everything is. He's
Yeah,
not
I
here right
think
now.
it's I'm going to bring up, it's almost like I've got a blog post about this somewhere. It was a talk that I did called Team Memory, Organizational Sharing and Serendipity in Distributed Workplaces, obviously. So with transactive, I think it's making sure that you have time to keep it keep it active. Like things are changing, people know different things, like you learn new things. And so that is, I think, things like collaborating with each other, or finding times to pair with each other, or swarm with each other, or do things like deliberate practice, which is where you might get together as a team and try out something that isn't in the live environment, isn't necessarily something you're doing right now, but some kind of skill that you can work on together that will help you in the future. So just finding those times to continue to work together really will keep that alive.
Yeah, and there's maybe a sort of satire of some team learning things I hear as well. We don't all need to know everything, or we don't all need to become as good as each other at everything. But
Mm-mm.
there's a balance between, well, we need to sit and share enough knowledge that we're not, if you don't come to work because you got COVID, we can survive, whilst
Yeah.
also recognizing that whilst we are all here, like the most optimum setup for the team or the best use of all of our collective energy is for like sometimes the person who's really good at the thing to do the thing. We don't need to like hamstring ourselves on purpose to get when we're trying to get stuff done.
Yeah, I think I mean, I think user research is always a good example, because not everyone needs to get involved in the user research or interviewing people, but it is really valuable for people to observe user research or get involved in some of the analysis of it, for example. So it can be led by a user researcher, but kind of whole team getting involved in that. Well, it brings us closer to the user anyway, but it's a great team thing to do.
Practically speaking, how can a team be a better transactive memory system?
I think that finding opportunities to collaborate with each other. So I think a good kickoff, like if you are a brand new team, like putting proper time in, like to get to know what it is that you're doing and get to know each other. Um, those kickoffs end up getting squeezed and squeezed. I asked someone recently, um, what are you doing for how are you kicking the project? How are you kicking the team off? And she said that she was writing a Gantt chart. So that wasn't the answer I was looking for. What I would be looking for is we've got a full 5 days of stuff that we're doing, which is helping us get to know each other, understand how we're going to work together, understand what we're doing, and feel really kind of aligned, so that we can actually hit the ground running and like really do some good stuff. And then if the team changes and someone joins, is taking some time out to do that. So I would usually use things like team stuff for people to get to know each other, like the team manual, for example, like talking about how you work, things you need at work, more about yourself, just so people can kind of work out how they're going to work together. You were in the workshop where I did some some of the stuff around the team manual, but questions like what are the hours I like to work is really handy when you find that, like personally, I'm an early riser, so I don't like having long meetings at the end of the day, for example, because I find that difficult, whereas other people the other way around. But if you can bring some of that stuff out at the beginning, it helps you, because it helps kind of stop any misunderstandings later on. Those things can be really handy. Things like kind of really digging into the problem can help. Things like Team Onion can help during a kickoff to really understand who you are and who you need to collaborate with and how you're going to do that.
So
Working
Team
at
Onion is I'm visualizing like a half an onion or something. Like how does that work?
the Team Onion.
For those audio listeners, Emily just held up a copy of The Team Onion by Emily Webber.
Is a model that I created almost 9 years ago now, I think, which talks about your team in 3 layers. So in the core of the team is your multidisciplinary team that work together day to day. So this is 5 to 9 people that are committed to solving something. They collaborate together daily on the same thing. then the next ring that you have is your collaborators. So who do you as a team need to work with on a less frequent basis in order to be successful? So that might be another team, might be an individual, it might be someone in security, it might be, you know, other people that you don't need to be in your core, but you need to yeah, you need to interact with to be to in order to be a success. And then around the third layer is supporters. So they might be kind of more senior people, they might provide alignment with organizational goals, there might be kind of other parts of the organization, they might people that come to your show and tells, demos, that kind of stuff. So maybe more like your mailing list, some of those people, mapping that out and being really clear about who's in those rings, how you're going to communicate with them, how you're going to collaborate with them, do you need them now or later or whatever, is a really useful thing for a team to do. Well, anytime, obviously, but particularly during kickoff.
I was just thinking about how one of your skills that I think of is taking things that the team needs and turning them into a tool or a framework or something that can be shared and done across lots of teams. How did you get good at that?
So my education. So I spent 6 years at art college. I'm a Master of Fine Art, which isn't necessarily a normal background for, I don't know, someone in my field, who knows. And I think one thing that I really appreciate, or maybe it's just the way that my brain works, the reason that I did fine art, is a lot of it is about taking different concepts, taking some kind of social psychology, taking some thoughts, thinking about the world, and bringing it together in different ways. So I think that's something that doesn't quite answer your question, but I think that's something that I tend to do that ends up bringing me to that point. One of my superpowers, I think, as well, is simplifying concepts, which often ends up bringing them into something that is visual, just because I guess that's how I think. So I guess the combination of those two things, like taking things from different places, visualizing in the way that's simplified, is something that ends up me putting stuff out there, turn it into models, and needing to like create stuff as well. I think that's quite important for me.
So, listeners at home, 6 years of art college, and you're there. Yeah, it's a useful skill set, and that I think that the combination of that and the sort of being interested in people and communities and teams, and I don't know of that many people that span that particular combination of disciplines. It's a dangerous one. Good,
Yeah, I mean,
dangerous.
lots of, and this is the thing, and back to kind of career pathways, I guess, and teams, is that most of us don't have linear career paths. There's two women, Sarah Ellis and Helen Tupper. Is it that way around? They've got a book and a podcast, I think, called Squiggly Careers, where they talk about, you know, people don't have linear careers. We have kind of squiggly careers, and that's really beneficial, because you end up in the place where you have. So why people aren't interchangeable, right? You have a unique set of experiences and skills that you bring to a situation. So, you know, I have a bunch of stuff I can do. I can make a nice model. I can always make nice slides. I can write stuff. I've written some books, write blog posts. I could do delivery management. I could do some product management. I could do this. I can bring a whole bunch of stuff together and throw a website together, many websites together. And that means that if I was in a team, or when I'm in a team, I use some of those skills that aren't necessarily my job title, and that other people might have, but they might bring other things that aren't necessarily their job title, and you get this kind of wonderful overlay of stuff, I think.
Are there any other of these Emily Webber original tools or things that that would be interesting to share? You think we've covered we haven't covered capability combs.
Oh, okay.
We've Otherwise we've done team onions, we've done communities of practice, you've done your 5 benefits of community of practice, we've done we've done your team kickoff, your manual of me.
Yes, capability cones also a useful thing for a new team. So the essence of that is, I guess, again, it's just a continuing theme of the fact that people have different skill sets and different experiences that they bring to a team, and it can be useful and maybe quite empowering for a team to talk about what it is that they can bring to a team, what it is they want to bring to a team, and then how they can work together to either bring that to the team or learn stuff from each other. So giving the opportunity for teams to learn as well. So capability comb is the concept that often I've been in many organizations that talk about T-shaped people. So T-shaped people being deep specialism with a kind of broad generalism across the top to make a letter T, or pie-shaped people, which is not that they're round, like pi, the mathematical symbol. So 2 legs, so 2 specialisms with some generalism across the top. I don't think people are really like that. Like it's like you don't you don't just have one thing. I think people are more multi-specialist than that, to varying degrees. And even within, you might be a designer with, you might be a specialist in some areas and not other areas. For it, you might be brilliant at prototyping, but I don't know, less good at front end stuff. There might be people are different, and that is great. And if everyone was the same, and if everyone was expert in the same thing, it would make it really difficult to get stuff done as well, because you want that varied, you want that variation to kind of across your organization anyway. So the capability comb says, so it looks like a comb. It's a bit like a comb with broken teeth. So you have specialisms in some areas. You have other areas that you're good at stuff. You have other areas where you want to learn stuff, and it's that shape of that describes you in the team. As I said, it's like, so you can say, these are the areas I want to lead on. Brilliant. Someone else might say, oh, I'm really want to learn more about facilitation. I might be a software engineer and never have the opportunity to, but hey, here's an opportunity for you to pair up and say, yeah, come along and get involved, or maybe you can run some stuff, and it gives the opportunity for people to learn stuff too. So it's a set of questions. It's an approach for people to talk about that and then have conversations and work out how they're going to work together as a team, basically. I think that describes it.
Cool. And yeah, you end up each person gets their own sort of comb with their deep lines and their broken things and their very broken things.
Yeah, and it changes all the time, right? So you don't really get a snapshot of, it's not like this is me and this is me forever. Like you learn new things. I think there's also, you might have things that you don't want to do on a team as well. So you might just not bring those up. I often get people saying to me, "You're so organised. You could do the admin." No, no, I'll do my admin. You do your own admin.
There's like a bunch of broken teeth that are like the things that I didn't attach to my comb. Please don't ask me to bring these. I will say no. Yeah. I think that feels like a good place to start to bring this to a close. Is there anything else that sparks of things that you wanted to mention that haven't managed to find a place?
I've got lots of things out there. Well, I'm in the world. I'm always interested in how people discover them and how they use them. The Team Onion, for example, was started off as a model that I created at an organization where there was an agile team that weren't delivering anything, but they were saying it was everyone else's fault. So it was a bit like, let's be proactive about collaborating with the people that you say are blocking you. rather than just saying, well, they won't come to our meetings. They won't come to our full day workshops. Do they know why? No. So, yeah, they're probably busy. Um, and that then turned into a talk, which turned into a blog post. And as more and more people started using it, it turned into a book and a website. So it kind of grew. It grew from there, and it's been something that and now I keep seeing it pop up at conferences. That's it, and keep seeing people I don't know talking about it and going, "Oh, okay, yeah, it's lots of people
That's
using it. It's
that's
great."
my thing. Yeah. How does
I
it
don't
feel
know.
when you see that?
Well, it's good, obviously. It's nice. It's nice. I guess it's nice to know that you've created a thing that is useful for people. Um, so yes, I don't always get to hear though. Like I always want to hear. I want to hear how people use it. I want to hear what's useful and what isn't, um, and how people are adapting it. But I don't always get to hear that.
Did you was Manuals of Me one of your? Was that an adaptation or was that a an Emily Webber
It's an
original?
adaptation, so it's not an Emily Webber original. It was created. I can't remember by who originally. There is somebody. I think I've got it written somewhere. It's the Manual of Me originally, so it's people joining a team creating it. The slight shift I've said is doing it in a team setting is really useful because it creates that conversation and then helps you create team norms around it, or just builds better understanding and empathy.
I did a Manual of Me with a team a couple of months ago. Team that had worked together for a while. It was so good because it led to because I think I did that on the back of having gone to one of your talks at Agile Cambridge or something like that, and we did our Manuals of Me together, even though people had filled theirs in individually. We hadn't actually gone
Yeah.
through as a team and said, well, what does this mean for us? We had a bunch of people who all said, I really enjoy praise and like recognition's important to me, and sort of to a person, everyone said it. So we ended up like readjusting the workshop and saying, well, I think let's like cancel what we were going to do before lunch and let's do a little praise bombing. And we went around like one person at a time, and everyone got a sort of minute and a half of praise bombing from everyone. And it left a real tangible feeling of like connectedness and vulnerability and appreciation, and something that I think wouldn't have been possible unless we would have had an excuse to say the thing that never normally comes up by itself, which is like, here's how I work.
Yeah, I think there's a really useful bit in there as well because it's like the anything else section is quite useful because you might have people saying, like I've had people before talking about their certain circumstances, which means, well, somebody that was talking about her circumstances that meant that she was unable to focus for a long time. And so it's like it suddenly went, oh well, so if I say like I can't be in this meeting anymore, like I'm not being rude, and this is my reason for it, and it kind of it just builds that understanding for people to go, oh, so and so's leaving early because they've got to pick up their kids every day, and that's cool. We get that. Like we're not going to go, oh God, they're leaving early again, like they do every
Again,
day. Yeah. Um.
yeah, I found it helpful personally to put like very uncomfortably, but it's useful to put like ADHD down,
Mhm.
like pre-diagnosed, undiagnosed ADHD. So I may put, there's certain things I'll find hard, and it's like uncomfortable to do that. But once it's there, I'm like, right, now you'll know that if I struggle with the sort of the follow up tasks after the meeting, it's like I still should probably do them, but there's reason that's a bit of context as to why I might find it slightly harder than someone else,
Yeah.
and things like that. So
So I
some
think all those
gratitude to you for that. Yeah.
all those things, it's just ways to kind of help build empathy and understanding around stuff. And then I think what I do sometimes, so like the team onion, for example, is like pinch from other things, bring it together. So pinch from things like Dunbar's number, um, for example, to try and put some guidance around how people think about like numbers of people in each of those circles. Uh,
So
for
Dunbar's
example.
number is the number of people we can keep social connections with. That one.
Yeah, so Dunbar's number, Robin Dunbar, social anthropologist, uh, studied the kind of it's to do with numbers of connections we can have, and it's some common repeating numbers that have happened in human history. So 150 is the number of people that we can be friends with, for example, and that's like the number. It's like the biggest villages used to get, that kind of stuff. And there's some other numbers within there as well. So Dunbar's numbers are 515, 515, 50, 150, 500, 1500, and they all relate to different social circles and different frequency of interactions.
Right, as well, I have like 5 really, really close people, 15 people that I can keep within my like close orbit.
Yeah, 50 people you might invite to a birthday party, 150, blah. 500 is something like names and faces and something like that. And those can be quite useful as just thinking of, I mean, we already talked teams should be small. They kind of vaguely fit into that. And you also get with organisations, when organisations get above like 40 or 50 people, they change because you don't know everyone anymore. So those numbers kind of repeat in lots of places.
Can't invite them all to your birthday party anymore. Oh.
1,500 people. I'll wait for the next big one.
Yeah, you're working at like Tesco or something, and there's 500,000 people at your birthday. Emily Webber, thank you for joining me on the Intelligent Teams podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Intelligent Teams podcast with me, your host, Daniel Susser. If you enjoyed this episode, there's a good chance you'll enjoy being a subscriber to the Intelligent Teams Substack. Go to intelligentteams.substack.com, click subscribe, and you'll get every episode, plus my writings and thoughts about building intelligent teams straight into your inbox every week, pretty much. See you next time.